Hello, Andretta here with my sugar paste rose tutorial, finally narrating it for you. Here are a list of supplies that you will need in order to do this sugar rose, at least the ones I use. Pause it if you need to see everything. There you go. We're going to start with some teardrop shaped cutters, 3 of them starting 1/3 of an inch taller than your rose center. So there's my 3 sizes going up. Little cornstarch poof all over the table. Roll out your sugar paste nice and thin before you put it through your pasta roller. I roll it to the second thinnest setting, and then I'm going to start cutting out my petals. And what we're going to do is use a 5-3-5 amount, 5 of the smallest, 3 of the medium, and 5 of the largest. The largest we'll cut later. So we're going to start with our cell pad and our shaping foam. And here we go. I ended up cutting them all out anyways, because I'm impatient. I keep them in a Ziploc bag to keep them nice and fresh. They will stay beautifully soft. Squeeze out all the air and make sure you zip that baby right back up. I use 2 different size ball tools. This is my standard medium small ball tool that I'm using to very lightly thin the edge. Again, with a ball tool you do it half on, half off the edge of the petal. That other ball tool I have is a Colette Peters from New York Cake. I love that thing. I'm using my petal veiner here, my rose petal veiner, and I'm putting my petal on my little pinky pink foam. I'm going to press both of them at the same time. Do like things together, it'll save you some time. So now I have it bottom side up. Make sure you get a little cornstarch on your ball tool so that it continues to just slide around. If you're really looking to thin the edges, using your white cell pad, excuse me, will be best. Now I'm going to take a knitting needle and I have it vein side up, right side up. So this is the side that would be inside the rose and coming outwards. And I'm using my knitting needle that I've chopped in half, and I'm getting a real nice curve. Now notice that curve, that curl that I created, is completely parallel to the uncurled edge. It's completely parallel. That's important. Keep watching. See how my knitting needle is parallel to that other side? That's what you want. And then I roll it up just until that top little curl is running right down the center and matches where the point is on the bottom edge. Just my big ball tool, just to give it a little bit of cupping so that it'll naturally kind of want to sit right against that beautiful cone. And those cones, by the way, I make with Crayola Model Magic. They're super lightweight. It is inedible, but it is non-toxic, like pretty much every other sugar rose center you would find, except for Gumpaste, but those are way too heavy and they take too long to dry. I'm using a little bit of sugar glue here, and I'm painting just on that lower quarter of each of the petals, and that's where I'm going to tack them to my center. I'm going to put them at an angle so that that curl is sitting pretty much straight up and down, but so that it wraps around the very tip point of my center cone. I'm going to keep moving it and working it just around because I really want it to be able to curl and coil with my second one. We're starting off with just 2 of the 5 smaller petal cuts that we used inside of, that we have inside the bag. Excuse me. So now we're going to take this one, and that curl, I'm really just kind of filing them almost together. I want them to be exact mirrors of each other where they sit on the rose. I want them to be exactly opposite so that they form a beautiful little coil in the center. They look almost like little bat wings right now. Now I love this paintbrush. That little pointed end, not only can I paint with one side, I can maneuver things with that tapered end on the other side, which is really, really nice and handy when you have to tuck little petals inside of each other. I'm going to get a little bit more sugar glue going here, and I mean literally very little, very light. If you put too much on, your petals are likely to start sliding around on each other, and you definitely don't want to do that. So we're going to bring that over, make sure that's nicely closed except that very top little lip. We want that to stay open so that it looks alive and so that it looks like it's ready to just pop out and begin to bloom open. Is that a real thing? Bloom open? It's probably not how you say it. Botanists out there, correct me. Now we're going to make sure that that's nice and secure. I'm going to give these petals a little bit of life. Move them around just a little, make sure they're tacked exactly as I want them. This is really the base to your whole rose. This is where you got to get it pretty. This is really actually where I find that the success in the rose is made. You want a tight coil there, but not completely closed. You don't want to be able to see the center inside, but you do want it to look like there's this infinite amount of petals sitting in there. For the life of me, I cannot get that petal to sit where I want it to. But now I'm taking the tips of these and just giving them a little bit of a curl backwards. That little bit of curl makes all the difference in the details. Isn't that lovely? This knitting needle comes in really handy for getting into small places as well. And it's blunt on the end, so you don't have to worry about goring anything. I'm going to set that aside and get some more petals thinned and veined. These are going to be the next 3 of the smallest ones that you cut. Remember, there were 5 total. We used 2 for the very center. Now we're using the next 3. I'm just going to go through and I am going to thin these, vein them, and curl them just like I did before. Now last time after I veined them, before I put them on my little pink foam, I put them vein side up. So that curl was actually in towards the veining. This time I'm doing the opposite. I am putting the back side of the veining towards me. So that will be the back of the petal, and right now that's the front of the petal that's sitting upwards. I know, confusing, right? Well, last time we wanted the petal to curl inside and around our cone. This time we want the petals to start pulling away. So you still want that same inside part against your cone and against the center we've created, but we want the petal to move in the opposite direction. You'll see. Just keep watching. Again, I'm going to ball tool that center to get a nice little cup in there so that it naturally kind of wants to sit around that cone. A little bit of sugar glue. Sugar glue, by the way, I use about, I don't even do a 1/4 cup at a time. I probably do 2, probably more like 1 ounce, like 1/8 of a cup, with about 1/8 to 1/4 teaspoon of Tylose powder. You can use CMC. I found a CMC that I really dislike to make sugar paste, so I use it for my sugar glue instead. It still works. Shake it up, leave it in your fridge overnight, and you're good. So now we're going to lay this on here. Notice that that tip, that top where it's curled, is almost parallel to the floor. It's not on its side. It's not at an angle. There's a reason for this. Just watch me. But I did still put sugar glue in that same general area, about that quarter area, quadrant, I think our math friends would call it. And now I'm overlaying these, but I'm laying the next one on over top of the last one. I'm not tucking it underneath the open part of the petal. You're working against yourself if you're doing that. We're eventually going to have to do that when we get to this last petal here, but it's not going to it's not going to be one after the other all the way around the rose. See, I'm tucking it in just a little bit, which is why I left that one so open in the beginning, because I knew I was going to have to tuck another rose petal in. Now I'm using that tapered end of my paintbrush again to make sure that they're nestled beautifully in together, pinching the bottom to make sure that all of my sugar paste is firmly secured against the center and the previous sugar petals. And now I'm bringing those little flaps from the petals in just a little bit more. Now, if you wanted to make a rosebud, this would be the perfect place to stop. You can either coil it in more like I'm doing now, or leave them open in that really beautiful pinwheel fashion like we had just after we nestled those in there. But this right here is a perfect stop. 5 petals and you have a perfect rosebud. Put a calyx on that, dust it, make it gorgeous, and you're all set to go. Now, if you don't pinch the bottoms here like this, what is likely to happen is that if any of that sugar paste is loose, it's going to not only not adhere to what's below it, but everything above it isn't going to be really adhered to a base or anything. And once you go to place it next to another one, or if something knocks into it, it's going to chip. And we really don't want to see that happen, not after all that hard work. So now I'm going to take the next 3 petals. This 3 is our medium size. Remember, 5 small, 3 medium, 5 large. So these are our 3 medium, and I'm going to follow the same exact process I just did with those 3 small petals. First thinning the edges, then veining. Now I already veined these, and I went back in and I thinned the edges again. You can, you don't have to. You don't have to, or you can. I do buy these outer ones because I really, really want them to start to get thin and look aged a little bit, because these ones came out from around the petal a little sooner than the inner ones we've already applied. So we want them to look like they've been out and about a little bit more. I sounded Canadian there. Holla, Canadian friends. Now this one I am curling with my knitting needle on both axes. So now they're kind of creating a little bit of a point. I try not to bring them completely to a point, but I also try really hard not to have them all look the same. So I try to follow a slightly different angle on each, because these aren't made in nature to look identical. That's not how they grow. That's not how they are. So if they all look identical to the next, then they're going to look like they were made by a machine. They're going to look less natural. Now I'm putting just a line down that one edge, and again that same little quadrant. I think that's quadrant 4. I think my math friends will be really happy with me for knowing that. Quadrant 4, 4th quadrant. And just like we did with the other ones, we're going to apply these. However, we're going to do a little bit of tucking in between the other petals so that they look like they're kind of coming out from the same areas and spiraling. Now I have this at what is almost a 45-degree angle, if not a complete 45-degree angle. You can see how my point is not going straight down, it's wrapping around the side. It's all a part of making those petals look completely natural, sitting really aesthetically beautifully together, and not just kind of falling out away from your center in little pointed petal shapes. Honest to goodness, sugar flowers that look like that drive me batty. Yep. Right there. There my fingers go. Showing you the axes. Who would have thought all these really great mathematical and scientific terms would apply to sugar flowers, but they totally do. Now you're getting a little bit wider on your sugar flower here, so you don't have to do as much tucking underneath that very first petal. A little bit so that they don't look like they're completely separate, but not a ton. Now you can use your finger to give some life to those petals, do a little bit of pinching and a little bit of twisting. And if you even kind of damage the edges of those petals just a little bit, that's kind of what happens in nature, and that's where you get some of that rich, deep color along the edges. So now is the time to do that. Especially if you have a fast drying, really firm gum paste, you're going to want to do this as soon as you get that on there. That little petal right there was not sitting in, and it was keeping the outer edge of the other petal from nestling nicely along there. So I had to add a little bit of sugar glue, sneak it in there, and press it in. If you have to go in like that with some sugar glue, you have to be real careful, because if you get sugar glue on the outside of the petal where you're going to add some dust, it's going to leave an awkward spot once you add some color there. So you want to be really careful about where you're putting sugar glue. And if you really have to get in there, use a fine brush. I had made a whole bunch of these at this point, so my hand was pretty darn steady. A few more pinches, a little bit of what looks like petting my sugar rose. This is also a beautiful place to stop for a small rose, but I can't stop here. I gotta go in and put in another row of petals, and the final row of petals that we're going to put on is going to be our set of 5 large cutter petals. These ones we're going to do a little bit differently. So now I'm going to fuss with this a little bit more. This is where we are, letting it dry upright for a little bit. Now we're going to get into those nice, big, lovely final petals. The only other thing that I have out here right now that you can't see is my mesh drying rack, which is actually a shelf expander. If you haven't heard my shelf expander story, I tell it in my Craftsy class. I'm doing the same exact thing to these petals that we did with the others. The other items that I have out right now are a little forming cup, a roll of paper towel, and then a bunch of little pieces of paper towel that look like little, you know, little things you used to load into a straw in elementary school and shoot out at other kids. Yeah, those things. The only slight difference in how I'm treating these petals as opposed to the others is, you'll see in just a second, I'm going to curl them a little bit more. And that spoon board sitting at the top of my work surface, oh yeah, that's there for a reason. These petals are big and they're going on the outside, and we're going to ask a whole lot of them. We are going to be asking them to really sit open at rather difficult angles, even for sugar paste. So before we're able to put them on the flower, we're going to have to let them dry a little bit. They're going to have to be able to grab some rigidity. Now these final ones, you'll see this third outer row, I've got 3 curls on. So the first row had 1 curl back after the very center petals. The first row of 3 had 1 curl back. The second row of 3 medium petals had 2 curls back, and the third row has 3 curls back. Now when I place these in my spoons, I try to give them a lot of what I foresee their final shape to be, because this is really where they're going to kind of firm up. They're not going to be completely solid when we apply them to our sugar flour, but you're not going to want to do much manipulating after this. So if you really want to get some life and some movement and some beautiful twists and turns and folds in your petals, now is the time to do it. Still ball tooling that center. They especially need it now because they're going to do a lot of hugging. Using that nice big fat end of my Colette Peters ball tool. And each one of these I do set in at a slightly different angle on the spoon because the spoon isn't completely round. It naturally has a taper to it. So if I turn a petal to the side as opposed to straight up and down, it's going to have a different shape. It's going to fall away, which is really quite a beautiful thing because you can get a lot of variation that way. I do like round spoons too, but this is the one I use pretty much standard. We're going to go through the rest of these and get these all set up on this board. And while I am doing that, in super speed, little disclaimer, this seems to take quite a while on this video. It doesn't, really. I'm only doing one. Normally when you're doing a whole bunch at a time, you can combine steps and get a lot more done in a lot less time per flower. So don't be intimidated. Now let me show you my setup. There's my wire mesh rack, my little loop of rolled paper towel, my little flower former, some of my petals that have been sitting and drying, and let's get to it. Now that's not really a quadrant. That's not a full quadrant. It's a little less. Because these are my final petals and I want them to sit nice and open, I don't want to put a ton of glue on right now because I want to be able to manipulate them and have them as open as possible. Once I get them applied to the flower, I will go in and I will start touching up where I need more glue to help it settle in and to adhere. But for now, less is definitely more. Whoop. I dropped things. Now your petal is going to be more straight on compared to how we were kind of putting them on at about a 45-degree angle before. Now these are more straight on. And the point of that petal is sitting right against where my floral wire is coming out of my center. And now I'm working more upside down for this portion. I'm going around in the same fashion, in the same direction, mind you, so that all of a sudden the flowers don't, or the petals, excuse me, don't start falling open in a different direction than the other ones did. So I'm still following that same pattern around, but I'm working upside down. And no, I haven't turned this over yet to have a look at it, but now I am. It's actually pretty easy to see upside down if you have them if you have them applied evenly. A little hook, and set that upside down just for a moment. No, that's not staying there for very long at all. But I've got to get some sugar glue on these other petals. So you'll notice even when I dropped that one petal, its shape held up. It didn't move. If you drop a completely freshly formed petal, that wouldn't be the case. But these sat for about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes. But you have to know your gum paste, you have to know how quickly it dries, and you have to know how dry or humid it is in the environment that you are making your sugar flowers in. Now I'm peeling that very first petal back just a little bit so that I can nestle this one in as well. I want them to all nestle inside of each other. I don't want them to stop abruptly or have the edges butt perfectly next to each other. That doesn't look natural, and it's just not pretty. And squeeze them together a little. And supporting it with my hand underneath, cupping my hand under the petals, because they are initially going to fall completely outward because I barely have any sugar glue on them, which is fine. Truly, it's perfectly fine. You have a little bit of working time. Don't be afraid of your sugar flower. You are the boss. You tell your sugar flower how it is, but still be nice to it. You want it pretty. And as you see it start to move and see the petals start to pull away, you'll start to see where you need to put some more sugar glue and where you want them to be completely adhered. We're just doing a little bit right now, and this is not the final stage. If you look at that little baggie in the upper left, that has little bits of foam in it, tiny, tiny, tiny bits of foam, the same kind of stuff that we use to dry petals and leaves on. I've just literally, I sat there picking it apart. Tiny little pieces. And we're going to use those to shape the leaves, and we're going to put it in a protective little cup. That cup, that purple little thing, is actually an apple tray from the produce section of the grocery store, and it forms a perfect little cup shape. And when you cut little slots in it like that, you can actually kind of bend it and fold it and shape it to make a more significant cup, or to open up even more, depending on what you're using it for. But those little, they're really sturdy too, so you don't have to worry about cutting them and then, you know, bringing it back together and, you know, losing its rigidity or its use. Really, I've had those things for quite a while now. They do really well. So now I have that underneath with my roll of paper towel, so that it has it, so that the rose has a nice soft something something to sit on top of. And now I'm just tucking in those little bits of foam in between. I'm using them to support the petals where I want them to adhere and stick to the layer before them, and I'm using them to help pull areas apart where I want the petal to fall outwards. So right where I have my needle right now, I put a little bit of glue on the inside of that petal. Now I'm going to use this little bit of foam, and I'm going to use that to support it while it dries so that they'll stick together. But you'll notice I'm not just taking all the petals beneath it and pushing them upwards. I'm allowing it to fall completely open for it to have a lot of life, a lot of volume, and to look next to impossible to have created with sugar. I'm going to keep going around it like this, adding those in, and this is going to dry for at least 24 hours. Know your conditions, and if you feel the petals and they still don't feel like they've set, let it be. Let it go a little longer. Altogether, these flowers take me about 4 days to create. Not a single one, but you know, an entire batch would take me about 4 days to create, between creating my centers, which I actually, you know what, I do those in huge batches and I just always have them on hand, but I give myself about 2 days for those centers to dry, to make sure they're dry throughout, and to create them by putting the floral wire in, and then a day for creating the flower and letting it rest overnight to firm up, to dry, and then another day to go in and add a calyx and dust to make it purdy, and to do the steaming, and then let the steaming set to make sure that it again is completely dry. So about 4 days. But man, you know what, sugar roses, they are worth it. As you can see, I fuss a lot. This is my favorite part of the whole process. I absolutely love being able to give it its final shape at this point using those little bits of foam. It makes me really, really happy. This is where they come to life, and this is where the beauty happens. It's not a petal I'm pushing at. It looks like it, but it's really not. There we go. Final little movements that you can still manage without tearing it. Go for it. Any little bits of pinching. There's the foam tucked in. And we're going to let that rest for 24 hours. A little sneak peek of what it looks like in the end. That's the center. There's our full rose with a bud next to it. Her beautiful profile shot. And then the buds, if you left them just as we mentioned earlier. Thanks for watching. There is another video in this series on finishing the roses with calyxes and dust and steaming. Be sure to look for it.